Welcome, everyone, to Color Commentary. We are your popper commentators, Michael Petchik and Adrian Guarzales. How's it going, Adrian?
Oh, good.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
I 3-0'd F&M.
Oh, nice. What were you? You still on Boros Monarch?
Yeah, dude, that deck is bazonkers. Okay, let me put it this way. That deck is good against the random people who sometimes come through Pats, and it's also just good against the people who are always there. Like the meta is pretty set. I can guess maybe 2 or 3 or 4 of the decks that are going to get played in a given night, and then there are people who combine, they bring their own decks, and that's kind of a toss up. But I beat Tordax. All right.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of has the embodiment of all the old Skyfisher decks ideal of, like, you know, I don't have any 90% matchups, but I sure do have no matchups that are worse than a 50-50.
Dude, but the thing is, Monarch makes that deck so good. Like, being the Monarch is awesome.
I mean, I feel like that's true in every format because it's even shown up in, like, Legacy. I guess it hasn't shown up in Vintage yet, and it will never show up in Standard. Although,
all right, fair.
Apparently, that was rumored to be a mechanic from Ixalan. So, all right, let's take care of the upkeep. First up, Adrian, let me ask you something. Do you appreciate art?
Dude, do I ever?
So Original Magic Art is a great website with a lot of merch with both art from Magic's history as well as classic art pieces from well-known artists throughout the history of the world. They even have a Pauper token collection. If you want to save 5% on your next order there, you can use the code commentary, spelled as it is in our podcast name, and you'll help us out. We're an affiliate. We get a little bit of a nice little kickback there, something to wet our beak. But they do some really, really good stuff. I'm just being totally unprofessional here and going to their website right now to see what else they have up right now. Because they are constantly getting new rotations of new and interesting products in. Right now they have a really great playmat that is the floor of one of the arts for Hymn to Torok. They've got one of the Cruel Ultimatum arts. They've got the Days Invocation art, which is gorgeous in a large format. And they've got a Ponder playmat. And they're always coming out with new tokens, especially when a new set releases. They'll usually pop some new ones out, and it's all good times. Yeah, that's really all I got to say about OMA. What about you, Adrian?
Well, I will be doing a video series again on Saturday. I know how much everyone likes those. I have been getting some props on the Reddit, so thank you. And if you want to see me play a deck, let me know. I'm down to play just about anything. I will be playing the deck that we're featuring in today's episode just because it's piqued my interest a lot. Hopefully, we do a little bit better than we've done the past 2 weeks. But, you know, as long as it's good content, I guess I can't really complain.
Yeah, I mean, you're providing good commentary even when you're losing, so... Last on our upkeep is Patreon. We are on Patreon. Patreon is similar to Kickstarter for ongoing projects that produce episodic content. You can go there. You can donate a set amount per episode. You can even set a monthly limit. So, you know, you only want to spend X dollars per month. You can do that. And there's rewards. For example, patrons get to listen to anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes of extra show at the beginning and then usually a little bit at the end. If you're donating enough, we'll let you just straight up pick out what we're going to cover some weeks. I don't know. It's a great way for you guys to give back to us if that's something you want to do. We kind of gave in to peer pressure on this one because people kept asking to give us money, and I guess we let them. But it's a really great.
Stupid of us.
Yeah, right.
And if you know what, and if you hate us, tell your enemies. Yeah, that'll get them.
Bring back that old classic,
dude. Yeah, that's the good one.
But yeah, patreon.com/color commentary. If you can spare some money and you feel like the show is worth it, go ahead. You know, we're never going to put our main podcast content behind a paywall ever. So don't feel obliged, but it certainly helps us out. It helps justify the time that I spend every week putting this show together.
All right, my God, we get it.
All right. So the deck tech this week, the deck tech was a spicy one that you picked out, and Why don't you lead us off with what's going on this week?
All right, I got crushed by this deck in my last video series. It was the first match I played against, and the deck seems sweet, especially versus control matchups. I'm talking about GL Nemesis's Sultai Land Destruction ramp deck. It takes elements from the green land destruction spells. It throws in just a pinch of the Flicker Lock combo, and then it plays Mould Drifters for good measure. So let's go in the deck. GL Nemesis, I think, has actually been releasing videos based on how many subscribers he has gotten recently. So I think these videos are on his channel. Mike will link to his channel, or at least one of these videos, probably in the episode description. Do you think that's okay?
We can do that, right? Yeah. We can link wherever we like.
Okay, good. But I'm gonna also be playing this. One of the big GL Nemesis is, and I won't just plug him all episode, but he's one of the biggest popper YouTube channels. He's over 3,000 subscribers, but there is a language barrier because he is from Brazil, and I believe most, if not all, of his videos are in Portuguese. So there is a bit of a language barrier there. So obviously, if you're listening to this, you probably speak English. So I'll be playing doing a English version. So I hope you check it out. But anyway, sorry, I've dallied for too long. Let's get into the deck. The first card we have is 4 copies of Sakura Tribe Scout. And let me tell you, Mike, this card was not $2 a pop when I was first looking at this deck, and it was today when I had to buy these. So
this is a weird, janky common from I don't remember which Kamigawa set, but why don't you tell us what it does?
It's a G for a 1/1 creature, a snake shaman scout. So and you tap to put a land card from your hand into play.
I just realized that you were going for the snake sound joke, but didn't really commit to the bit. But I appreciate
it. I guess I committed. Whatever. Anyway, there's a lot of snakes in this deck. In the playing we did right before this show, this was my least favorite card. I didn't actually draw it, but just anytime I thought about drawing it, I was like, wow, that card would be really awful to draw right now.
Yeah, so this is, from what I could understand, because I was baffled at the $2 price tag, it's played in Amulet Titan in Modern, where it lets you get extra Valakut triggers or lets you ramp into real big threats. But here it just kind of seems very medium at best, because the hands where this is good are already land heavy, and you already have a lot of ways to get lands out of your deck. I'm not a fan. I'm going to be honest.
Dude, I'm not either. I was actually talking about switching it out for a Sakura Tribe Elder, in which case you'd actually get some hard ramp that doesn't just, it dies, but you still get the land out of the deal, even though it does cost 2. So that's definitely up for debate. I'm sure Mr. Nemesis has his reasons. But our next card is 4 copies of Coiling of Oracle. This is a good card. It's blue-green for a 1/1. When Coiling Oracle enters the battlefield, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put that card into your hand. So it's always value.
Yeah, you're always getting a card out of this. And would you mind just reading that creature type line? Because I can never remember it, but it's glorious.
A snake elf druid. A lot of snakes in this deck.
Kind of by coincidence, but it's a weird little one. Coiling Oracle is really good. Good enough that it got shifted up to uncommon in Conspiracy 2. Just there is no fail case here where you don't get something out of it. And card draw / ramp on a 2-mana creature is not bad at all.
Yeah, it's a fairly strong card. Continuing the ramp creature theme, we have 4 copies of Sylvan Ranger, who is an elf. It's a 2 mana for a 1/1. When Sylvan Ranger enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So it's kind of like Sakura Tribe Elder, but on the front half, and it doesn't go into the battlefield. So I wonder if, even if you're really keen on keeping Sakura Tribe Scout, if it'd be better to go full snake. Go full snake, get 4 copies of Sakura Tribe Elder in here. What do you think?
Sylvan Ranger's a 1/1.
Yeah, the other thing I can think of actually is that we actually are playing main deck Capsize, Ghostly Flicker, and Temporal Spring. So maybe there are situations where you're flickering or bouncing this back to your hand, and in that case, this is actually better than Steve.
Sure, I'm not a huge fan of this, but it serves a role, right? It's not directly putting things into play, but it's still ensuring that you hit your land drops, and you definitely want to in this deck. So I can't fault it.
Yeah. Up next, 2 copies of Mould Shambler, Zendikar, Fungus Beast. Dude, the creature types in this deck are the best. It's 4 mana for a 3/3. Kicker, 1 and a G. It's a G3, by the way, for the creature cost. When Mould Shambler enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, destroy target non-creature permanent. So you use it to blow up lands for the most part.
Lands, or, there are problem enchantments out there, like, against, for example, Burn, you could use this as a way to deal with your opponent's Curse of the Pierced Heart. If your opponent has an O-Ring or a Journey to Nowhere that's holding down one of your permanents, you could use this to get it back.
You could blow up stuff in Boggles.
Yeah.
Could.
Anything but a creature, really. But
yeah, so it says it on the cards. So it do.
But yeah, it's a neat little kind of catch-all. It is not acidic slime, but it does an adequate impression, I guess.
Acidic slime would be way better.
Oh, acidic slime would be loads better. I really love that card. But yeah, Mould Shambler, role player, not really dreadfully exciting, but it forwards the game plan of both ramp and mana denial.
Yeah. Up next, we have a single copy of Mnemonic Wall, which is a 5 mana 0/4 wall defender. When there's a battlefield, you return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. Typically, this is played alongside Ghostly Flicker, which is a 3 mana instant, 2 and a blue, 2 and a blue. Exile 2 target artifacts, creatures, and or lands you control. Then return those cards to the battlefield under your control. So you flicker the Mnemonic Wall, you flicker the other creature, you get the Ghostly Flicker back, and you get value off your creature. So we are a Mnemonic Wall Ghostly Flicker deck.
Yeah, so only one of each, so kind of a little bit on the fringe end and not super viable, but we'll get into that later. Also, I'm glad that we finally have something with a boring creature type.
Yeah. Up next, 4 copies of Mould Drifter. If it's a Mould Drifter deck, it's probably a good. and Mould Drifter is just insane. Mould Drifter is one of the best creatures in the format, I think. 5 mana for a 2/2, flying when it enters the battlefield. Draw 2 cards, evoke 2 and a blue. Evoke is an ability or an alternate casting cost where the creature dies after you evoke it, but you still get the comes into play trigger. So it's good as 3 mana, and it's even better at 5 mana. Debate over whether or not you should ever actually play it at 3 mana. Those situations are certainly far and few between, but 5 mana 2/2 draw 2, pretty good.
And especially, I find that generally if I'm evoking a Mould Drifter, it's to hit land drops or to hit an answer very quickly. So I feel like with this deck, at least half of those situations are accounted for by nature of we're already ramping. So we're not really dreadfully worried about hitting our land drops a lot of the time. So
yeah,
it does help mitigate the evoked Mould Drifter issue. Yeah.
And then we have 2 copies of Dinrovahor, a recent downshift, or relatively recent. 6 mana, 4 and a black and a blue, net you a 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, return target permanent to its owner's hand. Then that player discards a card. So very powerful with Ghostly Flicker and Mnemonic Wall.
And I do kind of want to touch on this. Like, as far as I can tell, this is the very realistic, tangible win con. A 4/4 is not unbeatable, and only one Ghostly Flicker and only one Mnemonic Wall is pretty slim pickings for getting that combo kill online.
Yeah, but I don't know. You do blow up a lot of their lands, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah, obviously, Dinrovahor versus an empty-handed opponent is just going to be a Vindicate every time it enters the battlefield. But yeah, this is a cool card. I'm still really glad it got downshifted, but we'll get into that more after we've looked at the whole list.
Yep. So going into our non-creature spells, we have 1 copy of Capsize. Capsize is a control favorite. 6 mana. Well, rarely. It actually costs 2 blue and 1. Return target permanent to its owner's hand, but it has a buyback cost of 3, where you just get to keep reusing it. So I don't know if you would ever actually cast this for just 3 mana unless you were really desperate.
Yeah, it can shut down. For example, I was on the receiving end of one of these unbuybacked when I played blue-green arcane splice combo, because this sure does do a lot against that deck. But Capsize, all-time favorite. I will point out the 3 mana does matter in case of Prohibit. Prohibit can actually counter this.
Yep, it sure can.
All right, we got the one ghostly flavor we already talked about. What's next?
Up next, we've got a single copy Pulse Marasa. Return target creature or land card from a graveyard to its owner's hand. You gain 6 life. So pretty sweet with our Mould Drifters and our Mnemonic Wall and with really all of our creatures.
Yeah, and that's kind of all there is to say about this. We've touched on it 1,000,001 times. It's a good card.
Yep. Up next, we have 4 copies of Temporal Spring, which is a pretty interesting card. It's a sorcery, 1 blue, green. Put target permanent on top of its owner's library.
Yeah, and definite invasion block draft superstar. This is a really good tempo swing.
Better than Griptide.
I was gonna say, have you ever gotten to live that dream of doing this to your opponent's bounce land?
No, I have Griptided Nessie and Asp though, and limited.
Okay. Yeah. Similar feeling, I imagine. But when your opponent goes for that turn 2 bounce land, oh boy, it's a beating to set your opponent back to 0 lands and brick their next draw.
Mike, you're so a little gleeful, Mike. A little too gleeful. Up next, we have. Maybe you should play this deck.
We'll get into my issues with it after we've gotten through this list. Keep going.
They need hot content, Mike. Up next, we have 4 copies of Thermokarst. Destroy target land. If that land was a snow land, you gain 1 life. Sorcery, 1 GG. And then you say GG.
I mean, I guess this is like that little bit of flavor text is now actually relevant. Like this does actually gain 1 life versus one of the top tier decks of the format now.
Yeah. Sure. Up next. no, it does. That's not irrelevant. It does. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah, I mean, it's green Stone Rain. That's the most important part of this card. It's just the fact that it's green Stone Rain.
Does Thermokarst, is it just supposed to mean like burning forest? Because isn't karst a forest?
Well, sir, let's find out. I don't actually know. A Thermokarst is a land surface characterized by very irregular surfaces of marshy hollows and small hummocks formed as an ice-rich permafrost thaws. So it is a area that is undergoing melt, I guess.
Okay. All right. I was totally wrong. No big deal. I can be wrong once in my life.
I think the fact is that it's thermo as in heat, and it's a foresty area that is melting.
Okay. Up next, we have 1 copy of Foresee, which is actually one of my favorite cards flavor-wise. As a draw spell, it costs 4 mana. You scry 4, and the lady on it has 4 eyes.
Yes, and then you draw 2. The important part of that.
Yeah.
This is a hell of a dig spell.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Like, worst case scenario, you like put 2 things to the bottom, leave 2 on top, and draw those. Or I guess that's not even worst case scenario. That's like best case scenario. Worst case scenario, you just put 4 things to the bottom that you didn't care about. Just real quantity over quality there. But it works.
I really like the flavor text from the original printing. Wind times, watch, and watch time when wind.
You do like those little, I don't know what they're called, but the palindromic phrases that reflect on themselves.
Yeah, dude, I studied the Bible. Up next, we have 4 copies of Moinvuli.
I think so.
Moinvuli Acid Moss, a 4 mana time spiral special. Destroy target land, search your library for a forest card, and put that card into play tapped. Then shuffle your library.
Yeah. Better in formats where you have duels with types on them, but still just fine here. It's effectively 4 mana to create a 2 land differential.
Following that, we've got a singleton copy of Reap and Sow, which is a 4 mana, choose 1, destroy target land, or search your library for a land card, put the card into play, then shuffle your library, entwine 1 and a green so you can do both.
Yep. This used to be in the mono green Tron decks because it will fetch Tron pieces. It's missing that like basic clause that most of those have attached to it.
Yeah, here you're probably getting realistically Simic Growth Chamber, or maybe your Swamp. You can get your Swamp with it.
For the lands, 8 forests, 5 islands, 4 Simic Growth Chambers, 1 swamp, 4 Thornwood Falls. Is that 1 swamp just too rickety? It kind of feels that way.
You have Sylvan Ranger.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. So,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I guess you're probably going to draw it eventually. Somehow.
Yeah, I mean, you've got ways to get it. I'm just saying, like, 1 is a little slim. I kind of might like this just having like 3 Thornwood Falls and then like a 1 of Dismal Backwater. Just some other way of ensuring you have black mana.
I think I'd be okay with another basic.
That too. You've got stuff that tutors for basics, so why not? I might also like a bigger black splash, but get into the sideboard. Let me hear what they got for the sideboard here.
The sideboard, we have 3 copies of Dispel, target an instant with an instant. 2 copies Hydroblast, target counter a red spell or destroy a red permanent. 4 copies Natural State, destroy target artifact or enchantment with converted mana cost 3 or less. 3 additional copies Pulse Marasa, 3 copies Penumbra Spider, which is a 4 mana 2/4 with reach. When it dies, you create a 2/4 black spider creature token with reach. So it replicates itself.
Yeah. I actually really like Penumbra Spider for what it's worth. I like it mainly as a limited card. I think it's still playable in Pauper, but let's get into what we think about this deck. So you've actually sat down and played this, and what are your thoughts from the play that you've already gone through?
I didn't like Sakura Tribe Scout, even though I never drew it. It feels like you need some more draw spells, so I think I might like to add something like that. We were talking about compulsive research maybe, but yeah, it feels a little shaky trying to actually win the game because I spent so much of that game not having any way to actually win, and my opponent was able to draw out of the landlock I had put them under. So maybe additional draw, maybe some additional fatties. I could have easily cast a Little Mog's Crusher at the spot of the game we were in. So maybe one of those isn't so bad, or some additional draw, or, I hate to say it, Aurochs.
Well, let me hit you with this. What about Crows and Tusker?
I do like Crows and Tusker a lot, especially with Pulse of Marasa. So
I'm just not buying this, like, because two Din Rovahors, a Mnemonic Wall, and a Ghostly Flicker take up 4 slots here that I think would just be better used as 4 things for your top end. That's like just first brush of the deck. That's what sticks out to me. The Sakura Tribe Scout, I've also got to agree, is a little awkward. I imagine there are positions where it's good, but I'm wondering kind of what the ceiling on that card is. Like, what's the best case scenario?
I don't know. You get to blow up their stuff, and then you play this, and then you blow up more of their stuff.
But like, how many lands do you have to get into play in addition off of this thing before it becomes worth the slots? I gotta imagine like at least 2, right?
Yeah, 24 feels very high though.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tricky.
Just leave it alone. Put in something else. It's cool. Don't ever mess with the mana base. It's perfect. No, it's perfect, Mike.
So I would almost say, so this reminds me a little bit of the mono green ramp decks, which you mentioned Aurochs. That was kind of a common target for them. There was also Landowner Sentinels, Ulamog's Crusher.
The person I played against who was playing this deck was playing the assembly workers from Kaladesh.
I mean, chaining 4/4s together could probably get it done if it weren't for stuff like Affinity and the fact that Gurmag Angler exists, but I don't know.
I lost, Mike.
Yeah. Which one was this? Was this the Oromancer list?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, those 4/4s might be a little tricky to deal with, especially because if I remember correctly, that deck sometimes recurs Seal of Doom.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not helping in that situation because if I remember correctly, that's a Terror, not a Doomblade.
Yeah. Well. But anyway, keep going. Sorry.
See, there's some stuff I really like about this deck, like Coiling Oracle, Sylvan Ranger, Mold Shambler, Mould Rift Er. I like that. But then Sakura Tribe Scout, Mnemonic Wall, Dinrova Horror. The capsize seems actually I'm okay with capsize. It's sometimes you're just gonna get a free win when someone can't deal with it. I like Pulse Marasa. Ghostly Flicker kind of ties into the Mnemonic Wall package that, as I've said, I'm not a fan of. Temporal Spring I like. Thermokarst I like. 4C, I'm kind of shocked to not see any sort of earlier draw. Waiting until 4, although I guess you get to 4 quicker than most would. But I don't know. It feels a little weird. One Vuli Acid Moss, I think, is, you're doing the ramp and you're doing the land destruction. It's pretty perfect, and likewise for Reap. And so I guess my big question is, can we put a better win con here?
Yeah, that's really the thing. I wonder if you could be better off just playing extra Mold Shamblers even. And like you said, just ditching the Ghostly Flicker plan. I think the reason Dinrova Horror is good here, though, is that it does what you want to do, which is to destroy your opponent's resources. It's just happening so late in the game. But I imagine if you're very far ahead, you can really nail in the coffin them with the Dinrova Horror. So maybe it really is just the best choice. Alternatively, you are playing lots of spells. Maybe you could play, take out that package and run Gurmag Angler or Hooting Mandrills and get rid of either the black or, maybe play some additional draw spells to fill up your yard. What do you think?
I kind of like that idea. I don't know what your draw suite is going to look like, but I'm also thinking, we did mention Crusher, which I kind of like. Even late game Crusher can be problematic for some decks to deal with. Really just comes down and has an almost immediate effect on the board. The fact that unlike Reanimator, you don't get to get it back with haste does hurt a little bit. I definitely, if I can have the hasty 8/8 that blows up my opponent's stuff versus the non-hasty 8/8 that blows up my opponent's stuff, I can tell you which one of those is better. But I just want more top end. Like the ramp package is solid, but your payload is kind of leaves something. It leaves me wanting something. How about we cover the price of this and then let's get into our discussion for this week?
Sure. So in paper, this deck will run you about $30. It costs $29.74 from Card Kingdom as time of recording, and on Moto it'll cost you a measly 26 tickets. Actually, more like 27 because it's 26.22. What are you keeping from this deck? The Hydroblast and the sideboard are pretty expensive, so actually you could cut those, but you'll get to keep those. But then a lot of these cards are actually fairly cheap. It looks like Thermokarst is a little pricey, as is Sakura Tribe Scout, but I don't think you need the Scout. But Thermokarst is good. It's played in sideboards of tier decks like Stompy and Elf sometimes, so probably not a bad pickup.
Yeah, nothing in this is really going to be... Nothing in this that's expensive is going to be completely useless. A lot of these cards are a little bit fringe. Like, I don't see many 4Cs cast. Reap and Sow and One Vuli Acid Moss are a little fringe, but at least online those are pretty dirt cheap. So you're not really losing a lot if you buy into this. And yeah, as you mentioned, all the expensive stuff is good. So that kind of closes the book there, but our discussion topic is linked, and you were the one who actually pitched this idea to me earlier this week. We're going to talk about ramp, and we're going to talk about ramp just in general terms. So why would you play a ramp deck and how you would go about sort of building that? And one of the first things we should do is establish sort of a baseline here for the quality of payoff that you want. So there's a lot of stuff in Pauper that is big, dumb, and hits the board very quickly. So you got to always compare yourself to what's around you. So, for example, there are plenty of decks out there still playing Gurmag Angler. Are you ramping into something as good as Gurmag Angler. I also have listed here Fangren Marauder that used to get run in the Rug Tron lists, and also Ulamog's Crusher, which you can ramp into in Tron decks and such. Are you doing something better or as good as one of those? And I brought up, and yeah, I brought up Primetime earlier, Primeval Titan. And you really want something that is either so big and dumb that your opponent has to answer it, or that positively affects the board almost immediately.
And see, that's why I do kind of like in Rivahor, because, I mean, sure, it's not big, but it does immediately affect the board. You know, you either get rid of your opponent's best thing or you blow up something of theirs. So I don't know. I do still kind of like that card. But yeah, we're not going to get anything as nice as Primetime, obviously. The other big thing I could think of is you could, I mean, Stroke of Genius style, you could maybe splash red, maybe play Prophetic Prism, and then try and burn them out with Karavix Torch. That doesn't seem awesome, though, so I don't know if I like that. But Tron is just definitely one of the best ramp strategies out there.
Yeah, Tron is definitely sort of the premier one. And out of curiosity, I hopped on a website to look at some of our options. So when you're looking for payloads, in this deck we've got Dinrova Horror, but I'm also gonna throw some stuff at you. Let's see how you like it. So you mentioned Aurochs Herd, which is 5 and a green for a 4/4 trample. When it enters the battlefield, you search your library for an Aurochs card, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle your library, and whenever it attacks, it gets +1/+0 for each other attacking Aurochs. So this is a big old beater that tutors another copy of itself.
There's also several other different kinds of Aurochs. So you can tutor other Aurochs.
There are other Aurochs, but if I remember correctly, they're not dreadfully good.
I think. Hold everything. Okay, yeah. There's also just Aurochs, which is whenever it attacks, it gets +1/+1 on the turn for each other attacking Aurochs. But yeah, you don't get to search for the other Aurochs. So yeah, it's not as good. Sorry, keep going.
So I'm just looking through. I did a quick search for stuff that costs more than 5 and happens to have an ETB trigger. There's Maul Splicer, which is 7 mana for a 1/1. When it ETBs, you get 2 3/3 Golem artifact creatures, and golems you control have trample.
It's not too bad.
Not too bad. Walker of the Grove, which is 8 mana for a 7/7, and it has Evoke for 4 and a green. And when it leaves the battlefield, you get a 4/4 elemental. So while this one doesn't positively affect the board when it hits, it positively affects it when it leaves. So it kind of leaves you with some removal protection. So if your opponent doesn't have a way to counter it, they at least have to burn through 2 removal spells or still be facing down a 4/4. I don't know. I'm just looking through, and there's not a lot of ETB trigger big stuff. And Dinrova Horror is on that list. There's, God, yeah.
I mean, there's also, if you really want to stretch, you could go for It That Betrays, or you could even go for Wretched Griff.
I think you're thinking of It of the Horrid Swarm.
Yeah, sorry. It That Betrays is an Eldrazi. A big Eldrazi. A real one. A 12 mana one.
Yeah, that's the goofy one with the sacrifice clause, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So I'm just... I guess the point I want to make is if you're ramping into something, you don't want it to be that, I've spent all this time and all these resources ramping, and here's Accomplished Automaton. Here's my 5/7 and its little 1/1 buddy. So you want an actual payload, quote unquote. And obviously, we're not getting Primetime. We're not even getting Inferno Titan or Grave Titan or something like that. And we're not getting Planeswalkers, obviously. But
those cards are all played, Mike. It's really just Frost Titan.
Yeah.
No place.
Yeah. I guess Frost Titan is the misfit out of that incredibly good cycle. What about Benthic Giant? How do you feel about that? 6 mana, 6 mana, 4/5 hexproof.
I do not like it very much, to be honest with you.
Okay, that's
it feels very weak.
Well, I guess the reason I brought it up is compare that to to Gurmag Angler, which is a 5/5. Doesn't have hexproof, but is still, this big old body, and you're usually not actually paying 6 for it. You're usually investing. You're getting mana out of the spells you're casting anyway. Whereas
I like Gurmag Angler because it might as well have hexproof, so I do like that extra point of power better.
Yeah, and the fact that Benthic Giant doesn't trade with Gurmag Angler is a big strike against it in my mind as well. Just looking through here to see if there's anything else that might provide a really good payoff. We mentioned Ulamog's Crusher. There is also Eldrazi Devastator, the 8-mana 8/9 with Trample, which is just a big old beefy boy. Nothing else there really.
Just a big old beefy boy, he says.
What about Greater Sandworm? Let's talk.
I actually do like Greater Sandworm a lot. You can cycle it if you don't really need it. And we're running Pulse, so we could get it back later. And little guys have a really hard time blocking it, and it's a pretty beefy guy. I actually do like Greater Sandworm.
Also, let me hit you with Havenwood Worm. Are you familiar with this one?
No, tell me all about it though. I want to know.
6 and a green, 5/6 trample with flash.
Flash. Huh.
Kind of a funky one there.
I don't hate it. 5/6?
It is a 5/6, yes.
I don't hate it. I don't know how relevant flash is in our deck, but I don't hate it.
Okay. Here's the one that we talked about earlier, Croson Tusker, the big pig. 5 green for a 6/5, but it cycles for 2 and a green, and when you cycle it, you can search your library for basic land, reveal that card, put it into your hand. So I kind of like Croson Tusker as a payload for this, because not only does it help us get to the larger mana costs earlier, by ensuring you hit your land drops, you're also drawing a card which could help you dig towards a payload. As you mentioned, pairs well with Pulsamarasa because you feel less bad about pitching this early game and then you can get it back late game. I'm really high on Croson Tusker, but the 6/5 body, is that enough these days?
Yeah. The only thing I would really be concerned about is how much I know, because you can always just bounce. You could like snap. I was a little worried about Gurmag Angler. You could bounce it back to their hand though. I think it's probably fine. Like it gets you a land.
Yeah.
It draws you a card. It does so much. It has so much utility.
There's also just Rampaging Hippo, which is 4 green, 5/6 trample with cycling for 2.
That card is pretty good as well.
Yeah, it doesn't tutor up the land or anything, but it sure is. What is it that Limited Resources refers to this as? Keyword big. It's just a big slab of beef to beat your opponent to death with.
I don't hate it. But I do think that, so we have kind of, we sort of brush right past Aurochs Herd. How irrelevant do you think it is that it tutors additional copies of itself? Like you obviously don't think it's very good, but isn't tutoring additional copies like kind of the best?
I mean, it does have the distinct upside of once you cast one and it resolves, you have a second threat. My big concern with them is 6 mana for a 4/4 that even if it does tutor another copy, your opponent does have outs to that. Also, if you only have one copy of it and gets countered, it feels a little worse.
Okay.
So, it's not a big mana spell, but do we want to talk about Landowner Sentinel here? It's not really like a finishing payload, but it's kind of like a mid-game payload.
Yeah, why don't you tell us about it?
Okay, so let me pull it up so I can get the exact wording here. So Landowner Sentinel is a 2/3 elf for 2 and a green. When it comes into play, you may pay 1 and a green. If you do, search your library for a card named Landowner Sentinel and put that card into play, shuffle your library. So basically it has kicker 1 and a green, get another copy of this out of your deck. So in theory, with 9 mana, you can flood the board with 4 power and 12 toughness. And this kind of, it feels better when there's more removal-based control decks in the format, because it just kind of floods the board with non-1/1s, so you can kind of get that boon of not being weak to edicts and also just making blocking difficult for your opponent. So you kind of do this mid-game and then crank up like a real win con, if you will. This definitely showed up in the mono green versions I've seen of this deck.
Okay. I don't hate it, but yeah, I think we can be doing better things with our 2. Or I guess this is a 3-drop. That's not terrible.
I mean, it's kind of a 5-drop if you think about it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You don't ever really want to be casting this dude. Just
well, you could flicker it later.
You could, although I'm not.
Again, I think that's not the same deck though.
Yeah, I'm not big on the flicker. So I don't know. I think Krosan Tusker is one that I really, really enjoy. So once you have your payload, right, you've got, I want to be ramping into X. How do you get there? So we've mentioned the cards that were in the deck list before. We mentioned Sakura Tribe Elder. Tutor. It's a 2-mana 1/1. You sack it. You tutor up a basic. Put it into play tapped. Just pure simple ramp. There's also Utopia Sprawl, which is green for an aura enchant forest. When it enters the battlefield, choose a color. Whenever the land is tapped, it produces an additional mana of the chosen color. And it's, different sibling Wild Growth, which is just green enchant a land. Whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, add a green to your mana pool. We've got Arbor Elf, which combos well with the 2 cards we just mentioned because it untaps a forest. But we also have the other mana elves, Findhorn Elves, Llanowar Elves, and Elvish Mystic. And along with that, we've also got stuff like the newly released Oasis Ritualist, the 4-mana 2/4 that taps for a mana of any color, or taps and exerts to add 2 mana of any color. Out of those, which appeal to you the most? Those first kind of 4 categories.
I like the ones where you get the land and then it doesn't do anything else. I think having the creature is cool, because it's repeatable. But if it dies, then you're kind of sunk. Bolt the Bird sort of style. It's a stronger effect maybe to have it on turn 1 instead of turn 2. I don't know if you mentioned. Did you mention Avacyn's Pilgrim? Kind of does something similar if you're in green-white.
Yep, definitely an option.
But I prefer Steve because once you get the land, it doesn't matter if it dies, right? You just get the block. Steve is Sakura Tribe Elder for those of you who do not know.
Yeah. What about Explore? Explore is 1 and a green. Draw a card. You may play an additional land until end of turn.
I don't know. Do we accidentally draw additional cards? Haha, jokes. I do like Explore. Obviously better if you already have the land in your hand. Digging for the land is not very good. Time Walk has been likened to Explore, non-ironically, so it's a good card.
Yeah, I'm just not sure how good the upside is because we're not, we're not the format that is playing stuff to get to an early scape shift. You're exploring to get to an early 5 or 6 drop.
Mould Shambler, right? Like if you then have the Mould Shambler and you set them back, I don't know. I guess you don't. I guess you don't win Magic by having more lands in play, but
no. But sometimes you do. Sometimes getting your opponent off colors that matter to them can be important. Now, on a different note, we have access to Pristine Talisman, 3 generic for a mana rock, taps for a colorless. Whenever it becomes tapped, gain a life. Prismatic Lens, 2 colorless that taps to add a colorless to your mana pool or pay 1, tap it, add a mana of any color to your mana pool, so it filters. And we also have the Cygnets, and the Cygnets are very powerful cards. 2 colorless for an artifact, pay 1 and tap, and there's 1 for each 2 color combination. So, for example, the Xorius Cygnet adds, you pay 1, tap it, add a white and a blue to your mana pool. So these not only ramp you, but they also fix you. And are any of these kind of catching your eye if you're looking at a ramp deck?
Yeah, they definitely are. The most powerful ones and the ones that are generally played are the blue-black one and the red-blue one because those decks don't have access to other kinds of ramping. and they want access to their colors, and they want, maybe they have some colorless lands in their deck. That's not the reason we would be playing these. We would be playing these simply because it's basically tap 2 mana and is awesome. And our turn 2s, we do have 8 turn 2 plays already in the deck that we covered, but I guess, these might replace some of those. Really, I think it's best if you have a splash. Would you feel better about the deck we covered if we were running Deemer Signet?
I'm going to reply with, I would actually feel better if we were running Golgari Signet.
Yeah. Sure. Golgari Signet.
Because I'm looking here and I'm seeing a lot more green pips as I go down this list than I see blue pips, and I'm seeing a lot of one
certainly
blue. So the Cygnets are really powerful in a lot of formats. And they kind of have been relegated to the fringe. You'll occasionally see them in, Tron decks. You'll occasionally see them in Metalcraft decks where the fact that they're an artifact matters. And they also definitely help when, you have multicolored spells that you really need to hit like a specific 2 colors of mana. And as you mentioned, they definitely help with a splash. I guess I can see where you're coming from with the Dimir Signet, but by the time you're at 6 mana, I have to imagine odds are you've hit a blue mana somewhere along the way, and being able to use the green to help cast your other spells, I think I'd value slightly higher. That said, is there a reason the Signets don't just see more play? Like, they seem really solid.
I think the decks that need the fixing. Okay, I think the problem is there are a few decks outside of those control style archetypes that care about the extra mana and the fixing because they're running colorless lands. Out of the decks that don't need that fixing and are looking to play a 2 mana rock, I think they're all playing Prophetic Prism. I think that's really the reason.
Yeah, I mean, Prophetic Prism does the upside of drawing a card, which is fairly important. Being able to fix your mana as well as just cycling does work. So
and then the Tron variants play Prism plus maybe a Deemer Signet or Simic Signet. So
yeah, the Signets are again really powerful spells, but there's also the fact that you're usually taken off like turn 2 to do that, and turn 2 is already like our format's fairly fast. There are important plays that happen turn 2, like you're talking about a Prophetic Prism or like Stompy deciding to go off with Burning Tree Emissary.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Signets are kind of in an awkward place. And that also brings me to something like with a ramp deck, you kind of want to have this game plan of, if I'm playing Coiling Oracle on turn 2 and I hit that land, and remind me, does that come into play tapped or untapped? It's tapped, right?
Which card are we talking about?
Coiling Oracle?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes, it comes to. So
let's look at our.
No. You just put it onto the battlefield.
Okay, so with Coiling Oracle, there's if you play Coiling Oracle turn 2 and you hit an untapped land, if you've got a 1-drop, that benefits you well. For example, with Sylvan Ranger, though, you're looking to just go turn 2 Sylvan Ranger, turn 3 hit my land drop, and play a 3-drop. With Coiling Oracle, you're kind of looking at something different where it's like, I play Coiling Oracle. If I hit a land, next turn, if I also have a land in hand, I'm on 4 mana instead of just 3. So you kind of have this weird thing of you want your ramp to line up well with your payloads. So for example, if you're playing Cygnets and you don't really have much turn in terms of turn 2 plays, but you can cast a Cygnet and then hit another land, and 4 mana on turn 3 is important to you, that's kind of helpful. So sort of matching your ramp up with what do I need to hit the next turn after playing this ramp? Like what's my logical succession? If that makes sense.
Makes sense to me.
Okay, so we've tossed out some ideas of how to ramp. How do you stay alive? How do you get to your payloads? In this deck, for example, what you've got a little bit of main deck life gain. You got a lot of chump blockers.
Let me hit you with this. What if we were running Moments Peace?
What if we were running Moments Peace? Now, so there does exist that Sultai Tron list that runs a similar win con and does run, I believe, in some of the lists I've seen, 4 copies of Moments Peace. Now,
right, but it's not but it has no land destruction sub theme.
It has no land destruction sub theme. I guess the question here is, if you ramp well, I guess you can kind of ensure that you can always keep up Moments Peace to keep yourself from getting lethaled. The Moments Peace main deck has always kind of sketched me out because there are game plans that just get around it and it leaves you with 4 dead cards in your deck. Like, Moments Peace is real bad against burn, and even though that deck hasn't been putting up numbers, it certainly is always present on mid-go.
Would you prefer to play Life Finds a Way or Finger Marauder gains you a ton of life, so that's good.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I don't see us playing Feed the Clan.
Feed the Clan's probably a little sketchy, especially since we don't have a thing to activate the Ferocious until later in the game. I don't mind. What's the one from Hour? You just said the name of it. Life Finds a Way.
Yeah.
I don't mind Life Finds the Way if we wound up on Sakura Tribe Elder, because then we have a way to kind of turn that on main deck. But I mean, life gain's only one option. Another option is just, removal, like just kill some stuff. Make sure that make sure your opponent can't establish a reasonable clock on you so you can kind of, get those extra turns.
Yeah, and the deck we covered, the Sultai deck, it's certainly the Temporal Spring, in my opinion.
Yeah, because it's not really proper removal, but it sure does throw a wrench in your opponent's plans sometimes. There's also the option of playing the stack, playing some counter magic, so that you can kind of deal with the stuff that you can't deal with once it resolves. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of that. And there's also just, the land disruption, like being able to blow up their lands and just make it so the things you are doing are fundamentally affecting the game state more than what they can. Because, if your opponent can't really cast more than 1 spell a turn, but you've ramped via Acid Moss into casting 2 things a turn, you're kind of outpacing them a little bit there, and you'll be able to eventually pull ahead, hopefully, if they don't dig out of it. But as you found out before this podcast recording episode, what's the big catch about land destruction? If your opponent keeps drawing lands,
you run out of stuff to do. You run out of land destruction. It's awful.
Yeah, so I wouldn't. So out of these options, life gain, playing removal, playing the stack, playing some counter magic, or land destruction, which one of these appeals to you the most if you were setting out to tune up or build a ramp deck?
I think maybe ramp. Stack is, if you're a ramp deck, if you're a Tron deck especially, you get access to stuff like Condescend, which is very strong.
Yeah, just being able to kind of gain incremental advantage. And I dream one day we will get Dismiss at common. I just want to live in that world. I want to live in that 4-mana counter a spell, draw a card world. But I digress. So you mentioned Tron there. At the end of the day, I think the big question is, are you doing something that would just be better done with Tron? Because Tron does not require you to play stuff to enchant your lands. It doesn't require you to play cards that tutor lands. It doesn't require you to do... Well, I guess it does kind of require you to tutor lands, because most of them play some amount of Expedition Map or heinous amounts of card draw. So...
Tron's a good deck. Tron is maybe one of the strongest decks in the format right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be tough not to compare a ramp strategy to it.
Yeah, and I highlighted a couple things like color light and colorless threats. Your Ulamog's Crushers, your trying to think of other Tron threats throughout the years. Fangren Marauder. Anything that doesn't require a lot of colored mana, Tron tends to like, because even the Marasa Tron lists aren't playing a whole ton of colored sources. So it really likes those big fat threats that just can be cast easily. And I think one of the cases for ramp is, if you have a lot of threats with very stringent mana costs, I definitely prefer just playing a more traditional mana base where you get some amount of searching, some amount of dual lands, and going from there. But I do think that's always a good question if you're building a ramp deck is, am I just doing something Tron does, but worse, and forcing myself to play more support? Because in Tron, you're playing what? Your Prophetic Prisms, which, as we pointed out, already cycle, and you're maybe playing Expedition Map.
Yeah. Expedition Map. Do they really not play any other? You could play, this isn't really ramp, but you could play Crop Rotation also.
Yeah. Some of the green Tron lists.
In Tron specifically. I feel like we must have mentioned it at some point. There is the mono green Tron list where you get to do the both. You get to have the land destruction plan. You get to have the Aurochs plan, because in that deck it doesn't really matter. And then you get to have, I don't know. You remember that deck? Remember?
Yeah. I mean, mono green Tron is just play all these stupid big cards that you can and just beat face with them. And it's very effective at what it does, because it just kind of has this built-in mana ramp package where it doesn't need to try as hard. Like, you're not hoping to be like, okay, well, if I draw, I've got this opening hand with a Utopia Sprawl and a Wild Growth, and if I manage to draw an Arbor Elf fairly quickly, I can just go off here. But in this case,
I kind of want to play that deck now.
The mono green Tron deck.
Yeah. In this case, you don't have access to Tron.
Yeah, and in that case, with the Tron deck, it's just, okay, I've got 2 Tron pieces, and if I draw into the third one, I'm golden. Like, I'm going to start casting 7 drops turn 3, and it doesn't really have as much standing in the way of it just going, all right, here's a stupidly big threat. Do you have a Doomblade? Or, here's my Maul Splicer. Do you have 3 Doomblades? So I definitely think that that's a valid consideration is, if you're sitting down to build a ramp deck and you just go, should I just be playing Tron? And the answer is yes. Just play Tron. It's not that bad. It's great, in fact. Or you can do what you love, listener. You can do what you love. You can. I'm trying. We're trying to provide content for the competitive and the casual crowd. So I'm trying to be the Spike this time. I'm trying to be the guy telling you, hey.
That's why I'm playing the opposite.
Yeah. We've kind of got this the switched roles dynamic, and I'm enjoying it. I get to be the one who says, no, play good cards. Don't play that bad jank.
Don't play that bad card.
But I don't know. Any sort of closing thoughts on ramp strategies as a whole?
They're not that popular other than Tron, and I would argue that it's not secretly not a ramp strategy in Pauper. Yeah, I think this deck is really cool though, and I want it to work, and I'm glad that 2 people have 5-0'd with it. Like, it is cool. So yeah, if casting big fatties appeals to you, unfortunately not a very good format for it, but there are decks you can definitely scratch that itch. I guess I'm just kind of lukewarm on the whole subject. We had a whole episode about it, and I actually do like that deck, but I guess all in all, I'm kind of lukewarm. What do you think?
I'm kind of in the same spot. There are some decks that can benefit from a slight ramp sub theme. If you're not looking to ramp into 8 drops, but instead, you're looking to hit your 4 drops a turn early, I think that's a little bit more reasonable. And while those aren't really ramp decks, they do kind of borrow from what we've discussed. I know for a while in our group chat, we were talking about like when Burning Tree Emissary first came into the format, it was like, is it worth saying, okay, my turn 2 is going to be a Cygnet, so that way I can have a better chance of the turn 4 Even Cards Justice. So there are considerations to be made. And of course, there's always Tron, which, while it may not take on a lot of the component parts of a traditional control deck or a traditional ramp deck, excuse me, definitely does the same sort of, does have the sort of the same end goal. It's trying to, you know, play big things earlier than it should. So I guess, you know, if anyone has a sweet ramp brew, send it into us, please. I'd love to see what you've come up with, and maybe next week we continue the ramp discussion a little bit. We talk about a viewer option for going into big mana territory.
Yeah, I like it.
All right. How do you want to close this one up, buddy?
I think I'll close it by thanking you for joining us today. This podcast is brought to you by the support. Oh, no, wait. We got to do our thing.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Do we want to do it?
I was getting into my doo-wop there. But yeah, we'll do it. All right. We'll do 3. This creature is a 1/1 for 2. Fear. Threshold. As long as 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, blankets +2/+2 and cannot block. It is from Odyssey.
It's 1 and a black.
Yeah.
I could describe the card art to you, but I could not come up with the name if my life depended on it. It's like this weird,
card art is very unique. So yes.
It's this weird creature with like all these, they look kind of like lampreys coming out of its body and all these extra mouths. It kind of looks a little bit aquatic. Is this the card that I'm talking about? What is it called?
Fright Crawler.
Okay, yeah. I remember this card from Draft, and it does have really creepy art. You should go check it out.
Up next, we got a land. Okay. It's a legendary land. No, it's not. It's just an uncommon land. This is really not a legendary card. That's really interesting. Tap, add colorless to your mana pool. 2, red, blue, tap, exile a top card of your library. Until your next turn, you may cast that card if it's an instant or sorcery card.
I actually know this one. This is Nivik's Area of the Firemind.
How is it? This is like a specific place. How is this not legendary?
I don't know. I think there's a whole cycle of those, one for each guild, and none of them are legendary. In fact,
also one of the artifact lands are also unique places.
Well, I mean, those could be like, I guess there could be multiple seats of the Synod. I think
there's more than one Tree of Tales.
I guess that's right. Yeah. I don't know. Lands get weird about their legendary status. Like, for example, what is it? A Gaia Reach Sanitarium is legendary, and I'm willing to bet there's more than one sanitarium in, the Plane of Innistrad.
But this is Gaia Reach Sanitarium.
Dude, there's all sorts of madness on that plane. Also,
reefer badness.
I would like to point out, just as someone who knows this stupid fact, the correct term is sanatorium. A sanitarium is somewhere where people had blood taken.
Isn't it Santorium? Isn't that some kind of politician?
Rick Santorum. You got close there, buddy.
I know. It was a joke, Mike. Come on. All right, one more. Creature, spirit, 2, black, Ravnica, the sexiest plane alive. When X enters the battlefield, target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn.
Oh, this is Keening Banshee. I have this in my peasant cube.
Yeah, it's Keening Banshee. All right, that's enough out of you. 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
All right.
All right, now I'm taking us out of the show.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today. This podcast is brought to you by support of our patrons. Please consider supporting us if you like the show. You can check below this video or the description of this podcast for details on where to find us. We'd like to remind you, if you're listening to this on a platform with reviews, they're always appreciated because they boost our visibility. If you've got a deck list or idea for a topic, feel free to contact us either via our website or by emailing us directly at colorcommentary@gmail.com. Especially special thanks to Pat's Games and, of course, our dear sweet friend Elle. Until next week, this is Adrian and Mike, and we are signing off for Color Commentary.